The forest lay thick with fog, each tree a silent sentinel guarding its secrets. Lyra moved among the shadows like a whisper, her steps light, almost floating over the damp earth. She had learned long ago that the world outside feared what it could not understand, and Lyra carried a secret the world would never accept. She was wolf-blooded, a shape-shifter, but she had never shifted in front of anyone. Not once, not even her closest neighbor. Her small cottage, nestled at the edge of the royal forest, was hidden by a curtain of ivy and ancient oaks. It was a place of solitude, where Lyra could study the plants, tend to the animals, and let her wolf instincts whisper in safety. The wolf inside her was a wild, powerful presence, tied to her emotions, and she feared it above all. Yet that morning, as sunlight broke through the mist, Lyra sensed a disturbance. The air felt charged, heavy with anticipation, and the birds were silent, their usual chatter replaced by an uneasy quiet. She stopped, pressing her palm against the rough bark of a nearby oak. The hairs on her neck rose. Something or someone was coming. From the clearing ahead, a figure emerged, tall, broad-shouldered, with a presence that made the forest itself seem smaller. King Darius, the Alpha King. He moved with the quiet confidence of a predator, his dark eyes scanning the trees, sharp and commanding. When his gaze landed on her, Lyra felt a chill. He knew. She wasn't sure what he knew, but the intensity in his eyes suggested he sensed more than any ordinary man could. "Lyra," he said, his voice calm yet edged with authority, "you have been walking in my forest." She stiffened. Her wolf instincts bristled at his presence. "I live here," she replied evenly, trying to hide the tremor in her voice. "Ah," he said, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Yet you move as if you belong to the shadows, not the sun." His gaze softened just slightly, though the intensity remained. "Tell me, do you hear the forest speak?" Lyra's heart pounded. Could she trust him? Could she even speak honestly? "I notice things," she said cautiously. She avoided his eyes. "I have a way of knowing what moves in the trees." Darius took a step closer, his dark cloak brushing the fallen leaves. "You are more than ordinary, aren't you?" he asked. His tone was neither accusation nor curiosity. It was something deeper, an understanding that unsettled her. "I have seen wolf blood before." Lyra's chest tightened. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath. "You know nothing about me," she said, her voice firmer than she felt. "Perhaps," he said, tilting his head, "or perhaps I know enough to see the truth you hide." He paused, studying her as one would study a wild animal. "Do not think you can hide in the mist forever, Lyra. One day your secret will choose to reveal itself, whether you wish it or not." Before she could respond, a shriek pierced the forest. Shadows shifted unnaturally between the trees, moving with a speed and purpose that made her blood run cold. She instinctively reached for the small dagger at her side, but it was useless against what approached. Darius drew his sword, the metal gleaming even in the fog. "Stay behind me," he commanded, his voice low and steady. Lyra's wolf instincts surged, and she felt the familiar pull deep in her chest. Her hands shook and her senses sharpened. She knew she could run, could transform and fight, but that would reveal her secret. And yet, the creatures were closing in. With a growl, she stepped forward anyway. The fog thickened as the shadowy forms lunged, their movements jagged, unnatural. Lyra's reflexes were faster than any human's. She dodged a swipe, her dagger slashing through the air, grazing one of the attackers. But the moment was fleeting. One of them knocked her dagger from her hand, and she felt her heart leap into her throat. Then, instinct overrode fear. Her body trembled, her vision sharpened, and she felt the heat of transformation rise. Her fingers curled, nails elongating, muscles tensing. Her wolf form, the one she had hidden for all her life, surged within her, desperate and wild. Darius froze for a fraction of a second, eyes wide before he acted. "Lyra now," he shouted, and she understood. She could not hold back. She shifted, fur rippling, body stretching, senses expanding. The wolf that emerged was magnificent, its coat silver in the mist, eyes glowing with untamed light. The creatures recoiled, and the forest seemed to respond to her presence. She moved with precision, each strike controlled yet lethal, instincts honed over years of secrecy guiding her. Darius fought alongside her, his sword a deadly extension of his will, but it was her power that turned the tide. When the last shadow fell, silence returned to the forest, heavy and expectant. Lyra's chest heaved as she struggled to regain control. Her human form re-emerged, trembling, heart pounding, as she realized what had just happened. Darius approached, sheathing his sword. He did not look shocked nor afraid. Instead, there was something in his gaze, respect, recognition, and something else she could not name. "You could have killed them all," he said softly, his voice carrying across the quiet forest. "Yet you did not lose yourself to it. That is rare." Lyra looked down, ashamed and exhilarated at the same time. "I had no choice," she whispered. Darius knelt slightly, close enough that she could feel his presence without touching. "Choices are always illusions, Lyra," he said. "The world has a way of forcing truth upon those who hide from it. You have power. You must learn to wield it, or it will consume you." Her heart tightened at his words. She had hidden from the world, hidden from everyone, believing she could control the wolf within her. Yet here was a man who saw, truly saw, and he did not recoil. Instead, he offered guidance or perhaps a warning. I am not ready," she admitted, her voice barely audible. Darius rose, his dark eyes fixed on the horizon. "Readiness is a lie. The world does not wait for you to be ready. It moves, it strikes, it demands. You can flee, Lyra, but the forest will always call you back, and one day you will have no choice." The words sank deep. Lyra felt an unfamiliar pull toward him, a mixture of fear and fascination. She did not trust easily, and yet there was something magnetic about this king. He exuded power and dominance, yet there was a subtle vulnerability behind the mask he wore for the world. The forest was quiet once more, the mist curling around their feet like living fingers. Lyra wanted to retreat, to vanish into the shadows she knew so well, but something held her there, rooted to the ground, heart racing, senses alert. "You will need to learn," Darius said finally, turning to leave. "Not because I command it, but because one day your secret will no longer be yours to hide." Lyra watched him disappear among the trees, the fog swallowing his figure. Her hands trembled as she touched her chest, feeling the rhythm of her own heartbeat. She had always feared her wolf, feared the power that surged within her. Yet now, for the first time, she felt a spark of something else, a possibility that she could be more than what she had allowed herself to be. That night, sleep was impossible. The moon rose high, silver and watchful, spilling light across the forest. Lyra lay in her small bed, eyes wide, ears attuned to every rustle, every distant howl. She felt exposed, vulnerable, yet strangely alive. Then a shadow moved outside her window. She froze, every muscle taut. Before she could call out, a voice, low and certain, whispered through the still night air. "You cannot hide forever, Lyra. One day your wolf will decide for you." Her breath caught. She knew the voice. She knew the danger it carried and the promise it held. The Alpha King had come to her threshold, and the balance of her life, quiet, controlled, hidden, had shifted. She realized with a mixture of fear and wonder that nothing would ever be the same again. Outside, the forest whispered secrets she had never dared to hear. Inside, her heart thudded with anticipation and dread. She was alone, yet not alone. Her secret had met its match. And for the first time, she wondered if she would survive, or if she would be forced to embrace a destiny she had long avoided. The night stretched long, shadows deepening, and Lyra knew with certainty that the world had begun to change around her. The Alpha King had given her no choice, and soon she would learn whether power, fear, and desire could coexist, or whether the wolf inside her would claim everything. And so the forest waited, patient and eternal, as Lyra's journey into a world of kings, curses, and impossible choices began. The days after the attack in the forest passed in uneasy silence. Lyra could not forget the moment her wolf form had broken free, nor the intensity of King Darius's gaze when he had seen her shift. Though she had returned to her cottage and attempted to resume her quiet, hidden life, a new reality pressed in. She could not hide forever, not from the world and not from him. A message arrived, sealed with the royal crest. "You are summoned to the royal court. The Alpha King requests your presence." Lyra's heart tightened as she read the words. She had no choice but to obey. The forest, which had been her sanctuary, now seemed smaller, constrained, as though it too feared the journey ahead. She packed lightly, taking only her essentials, the knife she had used in the attack, and a cloak to hide her presence. The path to the castle was long, winding through dark woods and misted valleys. Along the way, Lyra felt the subtle tug of her wolf instincts, a constant reminder of the power she carried and the danger it posed. Yet, it was not the forest that made her uneasy, it was Darius. His summons carried an unspoken weight, and she feared that stepping into the castle would bring her face to face with truth she was not ready to face. When she arrived, the castle loomed like a dark sentinel over the valley. Towers rose into the mist, black stone etched with centuries of history and power. Guards stood at attention, their eyes sharp, weapons gleaming. Lyra's presence was met with murmurs, as though the air itself recognized her secret, even if none dared speak it aloud. Darius awaited her in the great hall, a vast chamber of stone and stained glass. His cloak fell over the steps like a shadow, his posture unyielding. Yet when he saw her, a flicker of something unreadable softened his expression. "You came," he said simply. "I had no choice," Lyra replied, her voice steady, though her hands clenched the folds of her cloak. Darius studied her, his dark eyes unreadable. "Choices are rare in this world, and yet some must be made whether we wish them or not." He gestured toward the hall. "Walk with me." Lyra followed, her senses alert. The castle was alive with whispers and movement, courtiers and nobles watching her with thinly veiled curiosity. She could feel their suspicion, their unease. Rumors traveled quickly in the court, and the shadow of the forest whispered her secret even before she stepped into the throne room. Darius led her to a balcony overlooking the valley. The wind whipped her hair around her face, and for a moment the world seemed suspended, the distance between the forest and the castle shrinking to nothing. "There are forces at work in this kingdom that you cannot yet understand," Darius said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Enemies who would use your power for their own gain and shadows that would see you destroyed before you even realize your strength." Lyra swallowed. "Then why summon me? Why not hide me, protect me from them?" He turned to her, eyes fierce and unwavering. "Because hiding is no longer an option. You were forced to reveal your power once. You will not survive a second time if you continue to conceal it. And more, I do not summon you as a prisoner, Lyra. I summon you because I trust your judgment, your courage, and the strength you carry within you." The words were unsettling, yet they carried a strange reassurance. Lyra had lived in fear of her own abilities, fearing the judgment and violence of the world. And now, for the first time, someone, this Alpha King, recognized that she could be more than a shadow in the forest. But that reassurance was short-lived. A distant scream echoed through the castle walls, sharp and urgent. Courtiers began to shout, guards rushing past with weapons drawn. Lyra felt the surge of her wolf instincts, the familiar pull of transformation. "Stay close," Darius commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Do not let them see you unless you must." The source of the commotion became clear. Rival nobles had infiltrated the castle, aiming to assassinate key members of the court. The air was electric with danger, and Lyra's instincts screamed that she could not remain passive. The wolf within her pressed, demanding release, threatening to break free if she did not act. Darius moved with lethal precision, his sword flashing in the torchlight. Lyra followed, keeping low, heart pounding. Then the attackers came too close. An arrow whistled past, and a shadowy figure lunged toward a group of courtiers. Lyra's wolf instincts could not be denied any longer. Her body trembled, heat rising as she shifted. Fur rippled over her skin, muscles stretched, senses sharpening to unnatural clarity. She had never revealed herself so openly, not even in private. And now, the entire court, the very heart of the kingdom, would witness her transformation. Silver fur gleamed in the torchlight as she moved with precision, her wolf form powerful and swift. Courtiers gasped, shields dropping, as she intercepted attacks, knocked weapons aside, and protected the innocent with instinctive grace. Darius fought alongside her, a silent partner, trusting her fully despite the chaos. When the last intruder fell, the great hall was silent except for the heavy breathing of those who had survived. Courtiers stared, awe and fear mingled in their expressions. Lyra's heart pounded, human and wolf instincts struggling for dominance within her. She reformed into her human shape, trembling, her eyes wide as she realized the extent of her exposure. Darius stood before her, calm as always, but there was an intensity in his gaze that made her shiver. "You were magnificent," he said softly, almost reverently, "and terrifying." Lyra lowered her head, ashamed. "I didn't want they would have been killed if I hadn't." "You had no choice," he said, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. "And that is what makes you strong. But know this, the court will not understand. They will fear you. You must be prepared for what comes next." The tension between them, unspoken yet undeniable, thickened. Darius's hand lingered for a heartbeat too long, and Lyra felt the pull of attraction, intertwined with the power dynamics that had always existed between them. He was the Alpha King, commanding, dominant, yet vulnerable in ways he rarely allowed anyone to see. She was dangerous, unpredictable, and yet he trusted her. That trust, fragile and electric, both terrified and exhilarated her. The next days were a blur of whispered meetings, cautious instruction, and subtle training. Darius taught her not how to hide her wolf, but how to control it, focus it, and wield it as a tool rather than a curse. She learned to balance human intellect and wolf instincts, to anticipate danger, and to move with both elegance and deadly precision. Yet even as she trained, Lyra felt the weight of judgment pressing down from the court. Nobles stared, their whispers cutting sharper than any blade. She saw fear in their eyes, and in that fear she recognized the truth. She would never be fully accepted, not for what she was. But in Darius's presence she felt a strange comfort, a recognition that she could be seen and still survive. One evening, as the moon rose high over the castle, Darius led her to a quiet balcony. The wind tugged at her hair, and the world below seemed distant, insignificant. "Do you understand now?" he asked, voice low. "Your power is not a curse. It is a gift, but a dangerous one. You must learn to embrace it fully, or it will destroy you and those you care about." Lyra's heart ached with longing, frustration, and fear. "I am afraid," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Afraid of what I am and afraid of what I might do." Darius stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "Fear is natural," he said, "but do not let it bind you. Trust yourself." "Trust me." The closeness between them was electric. Lyra wanted to retreat, to hide behind walls of caution and solitude. And yet the pull toward him was undeniable, a mixture of respect, attraction, and the unspoken acknowledgement of shared strength and danger. Before she could respond, a commotion erupted from the main hall. Shadows moved where they should not, whispers of betrayal and power struggles reaching her ears. Darius's jaw tightened. "It begins again," he said, his eyes darkening. "The court, the enemies, they will test you, Lyra. And soon you will have no choice but to reveal everything again in front of all." Lyra's chest tightened. Her wolf instincts pressed against the surface of her humanity, hungry and insistent. The balance she had begun to master felt fragile, teetering on the edge of chaos. She realized with a mixture of dread and exhilaration that the next challenge would not come from outside forces alone. It would come from within herself, and from the growing tension between her and the Alpha King. That night, Lyra could not sleep. The castle was quiet, but her senses were alert, every sound amplified, every shadow alive with potential threat. She paced her chamber, heart pounding, mind racing with thoughts of power, fear, and desire. A soft knock at her door startled her. She turned, hand instinctively reaching for the dagger by her bed. "Lyra," Darius's voice came through, low and steady, carrying a weight she could not ignore. "You cannot hide from what you are. Not here, not ever. And you cannot hide from me. One day soon, your wolf will demand more than survival. It will demand trust, and you will have to choose whether to give it." Lyra's breath caught. She knew he meant more than the wolf. She knew he meant the connection between them, the power he commanded, and the strange, growing bond that neither of them could yet name. Outside, the moon bathed the castle in silver light. Inside, Lyra's heart thudded with anticipation and fear. The court would witness her power, the enemies would test her, and the Alpha King would remain at the center of it all, demanding her trust, her courage, and her loyalty. The night stretched on, filled with shadows, whispers, and the unspoken promise of trials yet to come. Lyra had revealed herself once before, under duress. Soon, she would have no choice but to reveal herself again, fully, publicly, and under the watchful eyes of a world that might not forgive. And yet, despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, a small spark of hope burned within her. Perhaps she was not alone in this. Perhaps with the Alpha King by her side, she could survive the storm, embrace her true nature, and face whatever destiny awaited. The first rays of dawn spilled across the castle courtyard, glinting off stone walls slick with morning dew. Lyra stood at the edge of the balcony, watching the world awaken. The forest beyond shimmered in silver mist, and she felt the pulse of life flowing through it, the trees, the animals, and the wolf within her. She had learned much in the days since she had first revealed her power. The court had witnessed her wolf form, the enemies had tried to exploit her, and through it all, Darius had been by her side. Yet as the sun rose, she sensed that the most difficult trials were still to come. The Alpha King approached silently, his presence as commanding as ever but with a new softness in his eyes. "You have come far," he said, voice low, carrying a mix of respect and concern. "The court still whispers, the enemies still wait, and yet I see strength in you that even I did not anticipate." Lyra turned to him, her chest still heavy with the memory of recent battles and the whispers of nobles who feared her. "Strength is not enough," she said quietly. "I have power, yes, but I do not know if I can control it or if the world will ever accept me." Darius stepped closer, his hand brushing against hers, not in command but in quiet assurance. "Control comes with trust," he said. "Trust in yourself and trust in those who stand beside you. You are not alone, Lyra, not ever again." The weight of his words settled over her, soothing yet stirring a fire within. She realized that the path she walked was no longer one of solitude. The wolf within her, once a creature of fear and secrecy, was now a part of her identity she could wield with intention. And the bond she shared with Darius, a mixture of respect, trust, and unspoken longing, gave her strength she had never known. But the calm of morning did not last. A horn sounded from the outer gates, a sharp, urgent call that shattered the fragile peace. Shadows moved along the walls of the castle, figures clad in dark armor, approaching with a determination that chilled the heart. Lyra's instincts flared immediately, wolf and human senses merging into a heightened awareness. "They come," Darius said, his eyes narrowing. "Enemies who would see this kingdom fall. And you must be ready." Lyra swallowed, the familiar pull of fear and anticipation swirling within her. She had faced death before, but now it was not just her life at stake. It was the safety of the people, the kingdom, and the fragile trust she had begun to build with Darius. The attack came swiftly. Figures scaled the outer walls, arrows streaking through the air. Guards met them, but it quickly became clear that conventional defense would not suffice. Lyra's heart raced, the wolf rising within her, demanding release. "You have no choice," Darius said, gripping her shoulder briefly before stepping back to face the enemy. "Now is the time. Show them who you are." With a deep breath, Lyra let the wolf surge forth. Her transformation was no longer a secret, nor was it reluctant. Fur rippled across her body, muscles stretching, senses sharpening, as she became the silver wolf she had always feared to embrace. She moved through the courtyard with unmatched speed and precision, intercepting attackers, knocking arrows aside, and protecting those who could not protect themselves. Darius fought beside her, his sword a blur of steel and authority. Yet it was Lyra's power, fully realized and controlled, that turned the tide. The wolf moved with intelligence, not blind fury, anticipating attacks, guiding allies, and striking with calculated force. The castle, once a place of whispers and fear, became a stage for the extraordinary display of trust and unity between human and wolf, king and warrior. As the last enemy fell, silence descended over the courtyard. Lyra's chest heaved, human and wolf instincts still intertwined. She reformed into her human shape, trembling yet triumphant. Courtiers and guards watched in awe, their previous fear giving way to reluctant admiration. Even the nobles who had doubted her now saw the truth. Lyra was not a threat to the kingdom. She was its protector. Darius approached, his dark eyes softened by something deeper than command. "You have done more than survive," he said. "You have become what you were always meant to be." Lyra felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of pride, relief, and something she could not name. She had embraced the part of herself she had always hidden, and in doing so, she had earned not only survival but respect, and perhaps even belonging. Yet the moment was fleeting. A messenger arrived, breathless, bearing news that made the air tremble with urgency. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing low, "a rival kingdom moves against us. They seek the throne, and their forces are already at our borders." Darius's jaw tightened. "Then we leave nothing to chance," he said. "Lyra, you will ride with me. Your wolf will guide us through the forests, your instincts will protect the kingdom. Together, we will face what comes." Lyra nodded, determination blazing in her eyes. She had come far, and she was no longer afraid to step into the storm. The bond between her and Darius, forged in trust and trials, gave her courage. She felt the wolf within her, not as a curse, but as a gift, a force that, when united with her human mind, could achieve what neither could alone. The journey to the front lines was swift, the forest their guide and shield. Lyra's senses, heightened by her wolf nature, detected every movement, every whisper of danger. Darius rode beside her, his presence steady, reassuring, and commanding all at once. Their connection, unspoken yet undeniable, flowed through every glance, every synchronized movement. When they reached the battlefield, the rival forces were already massed, shadows stretching across the valley like a living tide. Lyra's heart beat rapidly, but fear was tempered by resolve. She understood now that power without control was dangerous, but control without courage was meaningless. The battle began with a clash of steel and roar of war cries. Darius led with authority, strategic and precise, while Lyra moved through the ranks with the grace and ferocity of the wolf she had become. Her presence inspired allies and struck fear into enemies. Every leap, every strike, every calculated movement was a testament to the balance she had achieved between human intellect and wolf instinct. Amid the chaos, Darius and Lyra found themselves back to back, a silent understanding passing between them. Their trust was complete, the bond unbreakable. And in that moment, Lyra realized that she had not only embraced her wolf, but she had also embraced the possibility of love, an unspoken, profound connection that gave her strength she had never imagined. The battle raged, but slowly, the tide turned. Enemies fell, retreating before the combined might of the Alpha King and his wolf warrior. The kingdom, once threatened by shadows and deceit, stood victorious, the forest and the people protected by the courage and unity of two extraordinary souls. As the battlefield fell silent, Lyra and Darius stood together atop a hill, overlooking the valley bathed in the golden light of dusk. The wolf within her subsided, leaving a deep, steady rhythm in her chest, a reminder of power, strength, and resilience. Darius turned to her, his dark eyes softer than ever, vulnerability shining through the usual command. "You have faced death, fear, and doubt," he said quietly, "and you have emerged stronger. I have seen your power, your courage, and your heart. You are more than I ever imagined." Lyra felt warmth spread through her, a mixture of relief, pride, and something that felt like the beginning of belonging. She had feared her wolf, feared her own strength, feared the judgment of the world. Yet now, with Darius by her side, she felt whole. "I was afraid," she admitted softly, "afraid of what I could do and afraid of what I could become." Darius reached out, taking her hand gently. "Fear is natural," he said, "but it does not define you. You have chosen to face it, to rise above it, and in doing so, you have chosen yourself." The wind stirred around them, carrying the scent of the forest and the promise of new beginnings. Lyra looked at Darius, feeling the unspoken bond between them, a connection forged through trials, trust, and shared danger. She realized that she had not only survived, but she had transformed. Her wolf was no longer a secret nor a curse, but a part of her identity that she wielded with grace and power. And Darius, he was no longer just the Alpha King. He was her partner in strength, her protector, her anchor, and perhaps, in time, something more. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, Lyra and Darius stood together, silhouettes against the fading light. The kingdom was safe, the threats vanquished, and yet the world remained vast, filled with challenges yet unseen. Lyra's heart beat steadily, wolf and human in harmony. She had embraced her true self, faced the enemies that sought to destroy her, and learned the meaning of trust and courage. And beside her, Darius stood, unwavering, a reminder that power and love could coexist, that trust could bridge fear, and that even the darkest shadows could be overcome. For the first time, Lyra felt something she had never allowed herself to feel fully: hope. And as the stars emerged, silver against the deep blue sky, she knew that whatever came next, she would face it not alone, but with the Alpha King at her side. Together, human and wolf, they would navigate the trials of the world, the secrets of the forest, and the uncharted path of their intertwined destinies. The moon rose, casting its gentle light upon them. Lyra breathed deeply, feeling the rhythm of her wolf within, and whispered softly, almost to herself, "I trust you, Darius, always." Darius's hand found hers again, fingers intertwining with hers, firm and reassuring. "And I trust you, Lyra, always." The forest whispered around them, ancient and eternal, a witness to power, courage, and the beginning of a new legend. The kingdom, once shadowed by fear and uncertainty, now stood on the promise of transformation. And in the hearts of two extraordinary beings, the wolf and the king, a bond had been forged that would endure beyond battles, beyond fear, and beyond the limits of the known world.